Okay, back in Kerbal. So, we'll start over here. This is the Making History expansion, 1.4. It's been a while since I've been in Kerbal, so it'll be some new things. But I think we'll look at some of the mission builder and mission settings. In the future, we're actually going to do some mission builder tutorials, so we'll do that in more detail in the video, but in the live stream, we just kind of look at some of the new features and see what's going on. So if you click on mission builder, opens up this new interface that they've added. Very similar to visual scripting that you'll see in game engines, also similar to some of the Lego Mindstorm stuff if you've played around with those kind of things. So based off of nodes, right? So you've got a node here, and as you look down through here, you're going to see all kinds of different options. Again, like I said, we'll go into a lot more detail in tutorial videos. But for instance, if I wanted to do a crew assignment, I can drag that out here. If I wanted to put a orbit or sphere of influence or plant a flag, we can drag that out here. And then what you'll notice here is when you click on a node, there's a whole bunch of options over here. Like I said, the scope of the live stream is a little bit not what we're going to do, but let's look at this one. It's pretty simple. So crew assignment, right? I can come over here and see if I can find crew or tourist, any crew. These are my default crew members that I have currently unlocked, so we can assign Jebediah to that one. Then what you would do is you would string these together by clicking and dragging these things out. And now you have a mission, right? So this is a pretty simple one. Jebediah looks like he has to plant a flag. But like I said, we'll go into more detail on these. And if you click this little button, it'll line them all up nice and pretty. So this is the new mission builder, and like I said, a whole lot of options in here. The cool thing about this is you can build these missions, and then you can actually share them. So the community can build missions and try them out. We're not going to save that though. Alright, so in here is part of the new mission builder making history stuff. So like I said, here's your community created tab, and there's some tutorials down at the bottom here. Since we haven't done any of this, I guess we'll just start there. These should be pretty easy, I would say. So what's this one say? Welcome to the mission builder. This is where you plan out and export your missions for others to play. Okay, let's give that a try. Well, there you go. It's a tutorial on the mission builder. So welcome to the mission builder. This is where you plan out and export your missions for others to play. Creating missions is quite simple. All you need to do is drag nodes out from the sidebar on the left onto the canvas in the middle of the screen. Once the node is placed, you can tweak and fine-tune its settings and altering its properties in the top section of the action pane located on the right side of the screen. Before we begin, we need to set up the start node. This will dictate where the player starts, what the starting settings are for your mission, as well as any other mission critical information. To start with, let's tell the player where they need to start and what the vessel conditions are. There are many options, but let's keep it simple for now and start them at the Kerbal Space Center in their own vessel. If you look down here, just making changes down here. All new missions appear with two nodes by default, the start node and the create vessel node. Now click on the create vessel node and notice that it is named a vessel called unnamed vessel. Click this name now and type in new name for the vessel. Alright. So, node title, there we go, vessel name. Let's call this live stream. What if we skipped a step there? You'll notice there are 2 radio button settings in the settings actions pane. One sets the vessel as player built, the other sets the vessel as creator defined. Player built vessels are built by the mission player, whereas creator built vessels you as the mission creator must build for the player to use during mission play. Okay. You'll also note that the other settings for the vessel, the situation, is used to set the starting situation for the vessels. This could be a launch site, land in an orbit, or an orbit. The default is the launch site. Let's leave our vessel set for now. So we've got that at launch site. But again, you can drop this down, change it over here. Next setting is the facility that you will use to build the vessel. That's VAB or faceplate hangar. The default's the VAB. And then it says let's leave our player created vessel set to this for now. Last setting we're going to cover here is the launch site selection. One thing that they did add in the 1.4 update is more launch sites. So this one's a new launch site. You've got the island out there and then the runway. So this is really interesting because it will actually allow you to launch from a far northern spot, which means your orbital inclinations and stuff will be messed up. Hi Whittister, welcome to the stream. Here we'll show. There we go. Turn that on for now until we need to do something. Alright. Players start their mission at the KSP launchpad and the vessel will build themselves. You can also choose to start players in your missions in orbit, landed, or a number of different things. Okay. Find the orbit node, locate it in the drag it out. Alright, we're going to turn the chat back off. Since the orbit node will be under here. Alright, there's our orbit node. Fantastic job. Now we need to set the planet to be orbited and also the target. Make sure the planet to orbit is set to MUN. Alright. I'll have to look over here. You think the MUN? Oh, this one. Please select MUN to continue. Orbit around the MUN. Okay. Great news. You'll leave the orbit settings at their default for now, but you can see that there are lots of options available to you for setting target orbits. You can even change them visually in the graphics action pane underneath the settings. Alright, I wasn't planning on going through this much of the tutorial, but let's keep going. Next thing we need to do is link to the start node to the orbit node. Click the output connector on the start node on the right side of the node. Once you have clicked it, connector line will appear. Follow the mouse pointer. Click on the input connector and then okay. So we saw that earlier, right? So you click on this, you get this nice little line. Click on that and now connected. Very similar to how Unreal does blueprints. And if you use CryEngine, their visual scripting system works very similar as well. Let's add one final goal to the mission. The end's in sight. Let's direct the player to land on the MUN to wrap up the mission. Drag out a vessel landed objective node. Alright, landed vessel. Now select MUN from the celestial bodies. Oh, there it is. I guess they highlighted blue. The MUN. By default, all vessel landed nodes will choose the whole planet as a target. I'll be more specific, choose the biomes. That's pretty cool. Now link the orbit node to the landed node. Lastly, let's save our work, otherwise you can't play our mission or share our creation with the rest of the community. Click the save button. Oh yes, we need to provide a mission briefing first. Type the name for your mission in the box. This will tell the players your mission, what to expect. Just select OK when you're done. You can also review your objectives, validate your mission, and add scoring and awards. List for the node, I think it should be in here. Very top of the dialogue. Okay, I'll have to find that later because I couldn't see it. Alright, we'll go through that in more detail, but what I wanted to do is fly some missions. Let's get into some action. So, let's come up here and try these making history ones. What's this one say? This mission tests your mettle at the dawn of the space age. You'll build a basic rocket to reach a low altitude. Next, you'll build a high altitude sounding rocket that will take a temperature reading from the upper atmosphere. Finally, you'll create Kerbin's first artificial satellite, Jebnik 1, and complete an orbit of Kerbin. Well, there you go. Let's give it a try. See if we can do it. Okay, this mission tests your mettle. Oh, we just read that. So, what's it say in our mission? The vessel can't exceed 14 parts. The vessel can't exceed 3.3 tons. The vessel requires these parts: Probodyne Staputnik. Alright, so I guess we'll try the low altitude thing first. So, let's add that. It's not much of a vessel. A rocket that will reach 5,000 meters and return to Kerbin, preferably landing near the Old Island airfield. We have a limited launch pad mass capacity. Reduce your engine fuel. Looks like they're giving us a pretty limited set of parts for this mission. Looks like just a solid rocket booster. I guess we'll go with that. Alright, and then are they gonna give us parachutes? There we go, parachute. We're not gonna go that fast, so let's just stick it on the side. Put 2 on just to make sure. And for stability, let's give this thing some fins. One's lighter. Let's see, 0.01, 0.1. That one's a lot lighter. Let's put those on. Okay, so it looks like in this mission the thing they're wanting to teach you here is the mass We are at 3.8 tons. We can only be 3.3 tons. So if we right click here, you'll notice we have solid fuel. We can just slowly start backing this down. There we go, 3 tons. 3.29. So it'll have a little bit less fuel, but it meets our requirements. Alright, see what happens if we launch it. Start mission. Your goal is twofold: to reach 5,000 meters and to guide the K-7 rocket to splash down near the old airfield east of Kerbal Space Center. So, if you've never played Kerbal before, look out there. That island out there is the old airfield. That's what we're trying to get to. With our tiny little rocket. Alright, let's give this a shot and see what happens. Alright, so that's a staging error. Let's go back to the launch pad here. We don't have to start the mission over. So if we look over here, notice that my parachute and my engine are in the same stage. That's a bad thing. We'll put that down there. Should make things a little bit better. Alright, let's give this another try. So, looks like we're gonna go plenty high, but we're not steering. So there's the airfield. There's no way we're gonna get there. We'll see how forgiving the mission is. I wonder, let's go to this. Let's revert back to the build. So I wonder if we've got access to our reaction wheels. Let's see any. Put that back on. Yeah, nothing in command and control. All right. So maybe the other fins. Yeah, this might be our mistake. See if those give us yaw, pitch, and roll. Oh, alright, let's get our mass back down. Three tons. Time for launch number 2. Four fins might be overkill. There we go. Okay, so these fins give me the ability to steer. That's what we were missing in the last one. Is our rocket just went straight up. So our goal is to launch up, and you'll notice we are here. Directly east would take us out to the ocean. We want to go a little bit southeast. If we look at our nav ball here, kind of want to go, I would say, somewhere between this 90 and 45 degree line. If we can. And how did we not stage correctly again? Alright. So it looks like if you go back to the VAB, start your build over, so we'll do this out here. There we go. Staged correctly. So we don't want to tilt it over so far that we don't make our 5,000, which we are going to more than hit. Oh, maybe not. So these meters up here are add-ons. Oh, yeah, we hit our 5,000. So now we just let the rocket ride. The question is, how close do you have to get to the landing zone in order for this to count? Because if we don't get close enough, we'll have to launch it again and steer a little bit more. Flies like a brick. Notice though that we're dropping faster, and when we do that it does slow us down some, making a little difference. Oh, we did our little time warp here to get us down a little quicker. So 23.4 kilometers. We'll see if that's close enough or not. May have overdone it with our parachutes. Although 4.2 meters per second is about where you want to be. Anything above 5 gets a little bit dangerous. The other thing that used to happen, I'm not sure if they fixed this in this build, is if you'd hit the water with your warp on, it could cause you some problems. I always slow that down before I hit the water, just to make sure. You can also watch the shadow to let you know how close you're getting. What a gentle splashdown. Oh, it looked like it gave us credit, so 23 meters is, or 23 kilometers was close enough. Question is, can we get closer? Let's try it again. Get a little more aggressive this time. Alright. One of these days we're going to learn to fix our staging. If you follow Scott Manley, he always says check yo staging. Alright, let's try this again. Immediately tilt over here. Or go relatively aggressive. So the key is we got to get high enough. We're going to watch this. And we're not going to make it. But let's see how close that gets us to the island. See how much closer we can get. But we're not going to get our 5,000. But I am curious at how much closer it gets us to the landing zone. See how good our 23 kilometers actually was. So the balance here is height versus horizontal difference. I don't think we got closer. Nope. Alright. Try it one more time. This time we'll remember to move our engine. We don't have to do it twice. This time not so aggressive. We'll make sure we get our height. So we're going to go with this kind of 45-degree mark. So let's see. 5,000 meters. Now we're going to see if we can get this thing to coast. We set this up and pull back on our fins, we might be able to get some lift there. So we've turned it into kind of a little airplane. I'm pulling back as hard as I can on those wings to try to get it to coast at least a little bit. Look at the aerodynamic forces here. Alright, so now basically all we gotta do is just watch our height. Make sure we don't crash into the ocean. What we got, 24 the first time? We got it to 22. Be about as good as I think we're gonna do. So Whittaker says cool probe. Thank you, sir. Alright, well, one of the goals for tonight's stream was to test the new mic settings. We figured out those didn't work. I'll have to do that offline. Do some more testing there. Alright, this time we'll accept the victory. Must now build vessel K-7B high altitude sounding rocket to continue the mission. That sounds great. Let's do that. Okay, so this is cool. If you look at the mission, it's got a tiered setup, right? So notice we got a check mark in the K7 reach altitude. So our next one is this here, which is K-7B high altitude sounding rocket, launch from the launch site. So let's build one of those. I'm assuming we're going to have more parts available to us now. Okay, it requires these parts. Robodobodyne. Get that guy in there. And now it leaves it up to us. So it looks like we have some new parts. These are fuel tanks for liquid fuel. We've got an engine. And our solid rocket booster. The nice part about liquid fuel engines is they let you do throttle. So control your throttle. We have to get to 48,000 meters. See if we got any other new parts. We got an adapter. A decoupler. Nose cone. Some more wings, a thermometer, and our parachutes. So we have any other limitation? Oh, it takes a temperature reading, so that's what the thermometer's for. Doesn't really say otherwise, so since they gave us new parts, let's use them. We're gonna put a liquid fueled engine here. And let's make sure we get the parts that we need, so we'll come in here in science. And we'll stick the thermometer there. And just because it gave it to us, we're going to put in all kinds of cool looking parts here so we can blow stuff up. Put that in there. All this is going to do is put a shell around our probe. That's what I was looking for. This little thing here, so make it a nice pointy. There we go. Now we have to decide which parts of our rocket we're going to bring back. So if we're going up to 48,000 meters, we're going to be coming back down. Probably don't need this whole fuel tank. So we noticed that they did give us a decoupler in here. We'll bring that guy in. So all a decoupler does is release that. So now we can land just our probe. But if we're going to do that, I'm going to remove this and put it up here on our probe so that it's funky, sticks out of the fairing. Put it here on top. There we go. That's beautiful. So that we can return that piece. Parachute. This little tiny probe, one parachute should do. That's ugly. Alright. Let's take that off. Stupid anyway. Just gonna make our rocket heavier. Alright, so now we're building like some kind of a monstrosity of stuck-on parts. Let's see if we can make it look a little prettier. There we go. Looks like he's wearing a hat. Alright, let's look at engines. So we've got two liquid fuel engines. We've got the swivel and the skiff. Couple of things that you always want to look through on liquid fuel engines. Their size, how much thrust they have, but also do they gimbal. Gimbal gives you steering in the engine thrust as opposed to using wings. If I remember right, this one is the size of our tank, and this one is bigger, so you can see how much bigger that engine. So probably not the most appropriate for our little rocket, but if you're running different size fuel tanks, which I don't know if they gave us any of the bigger ones. Nope. Might be what they gave us this adapter for though. Nope. Alright, well, we're gonna give this guy a try. So part of the fun, I think, of Kerbal Space Program is you build something, you're trying to achieve certain things, and so will this thing get to 48,000 meters? Who knows? But just to make sure it doesn't, we're gonna take out, actually let's do it this way. We're gonna pretend that we're like, oh, we think this fuel tank will be plenty. We put this little fuel tank on it. Alright, so we built this little rocket. So we'll give this one a launch, but before we do that, double check. Yeah, our staging's good here, so look down in the lower right hand corner. Parachutes in the top stage. That's our decoupler, and that's our engine. That's how we want it to look. I'm going to predict this probably won't make it to 48,000 meters. But that's kind of part of the fun. And then what we can do is we can take notes and say, okay, how close did we get? How much more fuel do we need? Now, one thing that's different between the liquid fuel engines and the solid fuels is throttle. You notice down here, if I hit the shift key, my throttle goes up, control key, the throttle goes down. X, it goes all the way to 0, Z, it goes all the way to full. So we'll see what happens with no wings and not the most aerodynamic top on this poor little rocket. See if it stays stable or flips over. Yep, flips over. Alright, so let's just let it keep running. Too crazy. I did say in the description that we might crash some rockets. Alright, so if we hit our staging button, which is spacebar, that'll decouple that. All that's left is our little tiny probe. Now, even in a failed launch, I always look for stuff I can test. So now I'm falling, right? I still got my parachute, so I have a chance to test, is my one parachute enough parachute to slow me down? So even though I knew this one wasn't going to make it, I can always learn something from this launch. So. One thing you have to be careful of is this number here is sea level, and this is a little bit above sea level, so you don't want to wait till that gets to 0. And it looks like one parachute is plenty because we're down to 2 meters a second, which will be plenty. Now the other thing that we're going to have to do when we get to the top is right click on that guy and log our temperature. On our next launch I'll show you something you can do that makes that a little bit easier during flight. Alright, so we safely landed. We just didn't meet the mission parameters. Mission failure. Okay, so we're about to learn something. I'm going to click restart mission. It's going to be interesting. Will it take us all the way back to having to do this one again? Or will it keep us in our stage that we were at? We're about to find out. And we get to start over. Yay. Alright, well, we know how to do this one. So we'll make this one nice and quick. I'm going to try this with one parachute just to live risky. We know we need wings. We're going to make a 3-winged rocket instead of a 4-winged rocket this time. Alright, so we still have our weight issue. There we go. We're off. And staging check. All right, here we go. We took off in the wrong direction, but we have since corrected that. Yeah, I don't think our 3-wing configuration was near as good. Let's see if we can coast it over there though. We're barely going to get above the, or out into the water. We'll see how forgiving it is. Alright, so with one parachute instead of 2, we're coming in pretty hot at 6 meters per second. But we lived. Well, evidently if you make it to water, that is good. Okay, so what did we learn is we're going to fail a mission, don't let it land, because that ends the mission. Alright, so this time we're going to build our sounding rocket. We're still going to do this little experiment though. Let's put the decoupler on. We're going to put the small tank on. Liquid fueled engine. Oh, swivel. And to satisfy the mission requirements, on our lovely little thermometer and a parachute. This time, to keep it under control, we're going to go with wings. For this one, we're just going for height, so we don't really need the steering wings. Just looking for some stability. We're going to stick this guy on here, and then we'll put on 4. What an ugly little rocket. Alright, so we hit Z for full throttle. See what happens. Well, that was a failure. Alright, so let's revert back to the EAB. I was really hoping those little wings would have helped us, but we'll put on the steering wings. That'll give us a little more control. There we go, we're more wing than rocket. Well, these have been horrendous lunches. This should be a controllable rocket with the gimbling and the wings. Alright, try a little bit less thrust. And we have no SAS. That would help us. That's probably where we're losing our control. We'll start with a thrust. Oh, did I put 3 wings on? Yeah, I wanted 4. Alright, well, my goofy little experiment to use a small tank is not worked out. Let's go to the big tank. Which should give us more control, evens out our weight distribution here. The other thing that might be throwing us off a little bit is aerodynamics, so we're only going to put on one parachute, but we'll stick it on the top so hopefully it doesn't throw off our aerodynamics too much. And then we don't want to forget our little thermometer. That underneath there. Alright. Get our engine. And fix our staging. This one to try, see if we can get it. Okay, see if this goes a little bit better. One thing I did say I was going to show everybody is the goal of this is to take a temperature reading, and when you're in the heat of flight sometimes it might be hard to get to a panel or find your thermometer. If you right click on the thermometer and click on this little thing here, it'll actually pin it to the display. So now no matter what I'm doing or whether I can see my thermometer or not, I can come over here and click on my log temperature. Okay, little rocket, you can do it. Let's see if we can get this guy to fly. That's a much straighter launch, so I think we had some weight distribution issues with that little tank. Now we're just going to see if this thing will make it. So if we watch down here, we want to keep this centered to make sure that we're not getting off too much. We're starting to drift a little bit here. You can see that the orange dot was getting off of the white dot, so we'll just make some minor little corrections. Whoa, don't lose it. It's touchy. Oh. So hopefully if we don't touch it too much like that, we should be able to keep this one going up straight. We'll try to fly this one more time. I'm going to drop our throttle down a little bit just to try to keep our aerodynamics a little bit more stable in the lower atmosphere here. See if that helps a little bit. As you get higher, the air gets thinner and aerodynamics become less of an issue. And we lost control. And get it back. I think we might have made it if we didn't lose control. Alright, so in the spirit of experimenting, let's do a couple little things here, make some more changes. We do have the ability, our structural, add this fairing. which I think will help our aerodynamics, so we'll add that. Hopefully that makes our rocket fly a little straighter. We're going to skip decoupling on this version. A nice streamlined rocket here. But since we are not doing the decoupler, we're going to add some extra parachutes to this one. And we don't want to forget our thermometer. Don't need 4 of those. The other thing we're going to do on this version is we're going to try to get our wings as low as we can. So I'm going to hang it off the bottom of the fuel tank here. Try to increase our stability. We got some weird staging issues going on here. That's our fairing. You can actually eject your fairing if you want. We want to put that between the engine and the parachute. So engine, fairing, parachute. So maybe one of our last launches. Let's hope we can pull this one off. All right. We're gonna go for it all, full throttle. Let our rocket fly. See if our aerodynamic cone, nose cone, will make a difference for us. Keeping our rocket straight and going straight up. Everything is symmetrical. Another thing that can happen, let's say if you hang one parachute on this side and none on this side, the drag on that parachute will actually make the rocket start to turn on you. So since this one is perfectly symmetrical, you should have the greatest chance of going straight up. And if you look down here, we've drifted a little bit on our nav ball down here, but for the most part our orange dot and the white dot underneath are lining up. You'll notice the green circle is also the direction we are going. So right now we are going to get up to, it looks to be 117,000 meters, something like that. Had to get to 48. So at 70,000 meters, we'll actually leave the atmosphere. Alright, so it wants us to do the temperature thing, so let's blow our shell here. Off that goes. And see it floating out there. There's another one over there somewhere. We'll right click on that guy, say log temperature. And then that meets our mission requirement. And at this point, if I would have built the rocket with the decoupler, we could have decoupled it. But for now, we're just going to enjoy the flight. So we're going to fly up here, about 113,000 meters, and drop this one relatively close to our island airfield. Alright, so in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and time warp. When you get out here, you can time warp a lot faster. As soon as you hit the atmosphere, it'll stop the time warp for you. Now we have no fuel left, so we are just along for the ride. There's very little we're going to be able to do on this landing. Now that we've hit the atmosphere, I'm going to time warp again just to drop us down. I can counter. It's trying to tip us over. See if we can keep it engine down. We're bleeding speed off. You notice our speed's dropping. This is heat effects, then it'll turn to white, which are sound barrier effects. And you drop below about 330,000 meters, or 330 meters per second. Now we are essentially below the speed of sound and along for the ride. So there's the Kerbal Space Center. There's the island. Before, we'll see if we can get some lift out of this to Alright, so now what we have to do is hope that our 4 parachutes are enough for this, which should be plenty. And I'm not sure why my staging didn't work. My parachute should have deployed. Alright, well, that gets us at an hour, so we looked at some of the changes in the 1.4 update. Saw that I am way out of practice in flying rockets. So we will get better at that and start to put together some tutorial videos on the mission maker. So if you see anything that you want us to cover, make sure you give us some information in the comments. We'd be happy to build guides for anything that's needed in Kerbal. Otherwise, we're probably going to start a series on just doing a career playthrough, so doing the science. The other thing that we'll probably cover is, you may have noticed that I had a number of different mods that I was running. These are the current mods I've got installed. Might be updating that list a little bit, but that can change the way Kerbal plays. So for instance, one of my favorite ones, Chatterer here. If you hear the Kerbals chattering over the microphones to each other in the background, that's all that little mod does, but it makes things really, really cool. So, alright, that's going to be it for this live stream. Thank you guys for joining us. Look for more SWTOR, Kerbal, and Starbound videos to come. If you have any questions, shoot us up in the comments. Other than that, have a great night.